Good morning. We have restarted the Torah. We are starting the book of Breishit and Parshat Breishit, the very beginning, the story of creation. And the question we have to ask is, what is the Torah? What is Hashem trying to teach us when He speaks about and describes the creation of the world? Is this the science of the universe that we're looking at? Probably not. The Torah, the word Torah itself, comes from the word hora'ah, which means instruction. The Torah fundamentally is a guidebook. It's a book of life. It's a book of teaching us how to live and how to be the kinds of people that we're supposed to be. And so when we look at the story of creation, we should not just see what it's saying and try to understand what actually happened, but we should have our eyes open to the lessons and the messages, the moral and ethical lessons, the spiritual lessons that we can learn from it. And there are no shortage within the story of creation itself. I would like to give just a few examples. The first one is that on day 2, the Torah speaks about Hashem separating the waters. There was water and Hashem separates between the upper and the lower waters. Whatever that means in practical terms, but there's this idea that the water was separated and the upper waters became the heavens and the lower waters were left on earth. And to an extent that's a little unfair. The lower waters, we could imagine, if we would look at them as people, we'd imagine that the lower waters could feel left out. The lower waters do not become part of heaven. They have their compatriots, was part of them, was all part of the water. Some of it's chosen to become heaven, the rest of it stays on earth. And that doesn't seem fair. And so Hashem says we will have, what we actually celebrated now or remembered now, is the water drawing ceremony of Sukkot that was performed in the temple in the Beit HaMikdash. Every year that water was given as a special offering to Hashem, water from this world. And part of that was to make up for the fact that the water of this world was not given that special privilege of becoming heaven, but water from this world was made into the special water ceremony. The idea is not everyone can be first, not everyone can be chosen, not everyone can be awarded in the same way, but nobody gets left behind. If you can't recognize and affirm a person for their achievements in a certain area, it is incumbent upon you to see how you can recognize and affirm them in another area. Everybody has special skills and talents. Everyone has something great that they can do. And the fact that they didn't achieve or excel over here doesn't mean they haven't achieved and excelled elsewhere. You have to find a way, as a parent, as an educator, whatever your role is, as an employer, you have to find a way to affirm and recognize the things that people accomplish, even if it isn't the greatest achievement, even if it isn't that they've become heaven. You've got to find a way that they still don't feel left behind. Unless, of course, they genuinely haven't achieved. But the fact that their skills didn't lie in one area shouldn't be something that should stand in their way. The second idea that I'd like to share with you is the famous Gemara, the famous discussion that our sages have about the sun and the moon. The Torah tells us, when it's speaking about the day 4, about the creation of the luminaries, that Hashem created et shnei ha'ma'orot ha'gedolim, the 2 big lights. It's a ma'or gadol lemimshelat hayom, it's a ma'or katan lemimshelat halayla. The big light to illuminate, to rule over the day, and the small light to rule over the night. The big light, of course, being the sun, the small light being the moon. But the question our sages ask is that Hashem says the 2 big lights, and then it says the big light and the small light. So hold on a second. Are they both big, or is one big and one small? So on a simple level, they're both big, but the moon is the smaller of the 2. But our sages weren't satisfied with that, because they called big and then it's called big and small. So they said, in fact, what happened was that Hashem created the sun and the moon of equal stature, of equal magnitude, of equal brightness. However, the moon turns to Hashem and says, Hashem, ein shtei malachim mishtamshim beketer echad. 2 kings cannot wear the same crown. It shouldn't be that the sun and the moon have equal glory. So Hashem said to the moon, you're right. Sun and the moon can't have equal glory. but because you're the one who suggested it, because you felt somehow diminished by having to share your greatness, you're the one who's going to become smaller. So the first lesson there, the straightforward lesson that we know, is that the more you try to aggrandize yourself, the more honor and glory you try to accrue and try to take for yourself, the smaller you actually become. One who runs after honor, honor runs away from him. So the moon tries to become greater, tries to put the sun down, but when you try to make somebody else smaller, you yourself are the one who truly becomes small. That's a straightforward lesson, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. But if you look, there's something else that our sages teach us as well. Hashem creates the sun and the moon, and all the stars. The stars aren't mentioned initially. It's the two big lights. Then it speaks about the sun and the day, the moon and the night, and all the stars. And I remember hearing somebody mention this. They say, yeah, you just read through the Torah, there's the stars as well. The stars are arguably the greatest creation in all of the universe. The sheer number of the stars, the size of the stars, the awesome power of the nuclear reactions that are occurring in these hundreds of billions of stars all of the time. And yet that line is simply thrown out that the stars are created as well. And our sages say that the stars were created in order to appease the moon, in order to make the moon feel better. The moon had been rebuked, the moon had been shrunk, the moon had to learn this lesson. Again, not that we are understanding this literally, we're understanding this as a metaphor. But the moon had to learn this lesson of not running after honor, and Hashem had to rebuke the moon. Nonetheless, Hashem wants to show the moon that it's still loved. He wants to show the moon that it's still valued. And so even after the rebuke and the discipline, Hashem gives the moon this company, these stars. The idea, we almost see the purpose of the stars, of the greatness of creation, is to make the moon feel better, that it's not alone, that even though Hashem has rebuked it, Hashem still loves it. And that's another very, very important lesson. If you ever have cause to criticize or to rebuke somebody, you need to make sure that you do it in a way that it's clear, that you either verbally make it explicit, or it's clear from the context that you still love and value the person. The last idea I'd like to share is on day number 6, when Hashem, blessed be comparing day number 5 and 6, when Hashem creates the sea creatures and the air creatures, birds and fish, on day 5, and then land creatures on day 6. We find that Hashem blesses the sea and air creatures, be fruitful and multiply, but He does not bless the land animals to be fruitful and multiply. And our sages tell us that that's because the snake was included in the land animals, and Hashem did not want to give this special blessing to the snake, and therefore He avoided giving the blessing to the land animals altogether. Now why He did that, we maybe discuss another time, but the point is that Hashem was careful with His blessings. As much as Hashem loves everybody and everything, and as much as these were the creations and chosen work of Hashem, Hashem was aware that you can't approve of everything, you can't legitimize everything, you can't give your stamp of approval and your blessing to everything. Had He given His blessing to the animals, the snake, who was the cause of so much trouble, would also have received that blessing. And that was something Hashem was not prepared to do. He was willing to bless the air creatures, He was willing to bless the sea creatures, but the land creatures did not get that blessing. We have to think about that as well. What are we prepared to bless, to approve, to give our approbation of in life? Got to be very careful. It's very nice and it's very easy to say that everything's wonderful. But is it really? Is this really something that you're prepared to stand up for? Is this something that you are prepared to say, it's good, it's wonderful, it has my blessing? If so, then go ahead. We should strengthen good things, we should support good things. But if it isn't, we have a responsibility to stand up for our values as well. Have a wonderful Shabbos.